Commissioner Layden is on his way, but I think let's get going. I'm not sure if he's online. If he is online, we are going to start introductions as you come to the meeting. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan McKelkey. I am the Human Services Director for Douglas County, and we'll have all of the executive members introduce themselves.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Rand Clark, Community Services Manager, Department of Community Development. So, Mayor.
Good morning. Town of Castle Rock Mayor Jason Gray.
Good morning, James Scholes, Community Business Person.
Morning, Aaron White, Manor Resource Center.
Hi, Dan Marlowe, Help and Hope Center.
Kirk Wilson, Lone Tree.
Darren Weekly, Douglas County Sheriff.
Tiffany Marcito, Heart Team.
Matt Hall, Douglas County Sheriff's Office.
Mike Hill, Douglas County Health Department.
Jeff Garcia, County Attorney.
And I believe there's some members online. If you're online and on the executive committee, could you please introduce yourself?
There's somebody, looks like somebody's trying to talk, potentially.
Mike Paul, he missed the rock.
Yes, this is Bob Laguerre. I didn't know I was an executive committee member, but this is the link they sent me. So I'm just listening in.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online that would like to introduce themselves? Okay, hearing none, we're going to start with our presentation today. Today we have a presentation regarding the McKinney-Vento Act. Megan Tran from the Douglas County School District is going to be the presenter.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today to represent the school district and to discuss McKinney-Vento. I'm very grateful for the meetings we've been having with the Douglas County Homeless Initiative and the partnerships we've created, and just really grateful to Douglas County for addressing homelessness in such a compassionate way with the 4 C's, and for working together to find solutions and help for people who are in their greatest time of need. So just a little bit of background on McKinney-Vento. Oh, sorry. Do you have my? Okay, yeah, take your time. So the McKinney-Vento eligibility, it's actually a federal program that was started in the 1980s during Ronald Reagan's presidency. And it's really to address homelessness with students and making sure that they always have access to an education regardless of their address or their living situation. What the McKinney-Vento Act really tries to address is that when a student starts school in our district, we really want them to be able to stay here and finish the year and have a sense of, you know, community and belonging and not have to keep on switching schools. So the definition for McKinney-Vento eligibility is truly any student who enrolls here in Douglas County without a permanent address, or what often happens is they lose their permanent address. So we include students who are doubled up, living with other family members, students who are living in hotels, motels, and possibly paying for it themselves, but at a great financial hardship to them. Emergency transitional shelters, and then living in places like cars, parks, places where they're not really meant to live. If you could forward, please. So that's like the McKinney-Vento definition. Now the HUD definition for homelessness is a little bit different because it does not take into account students or families who are doubled up, and it also doesn't take into account families who are paying for these hotels and motels on their own. And just to clarify with doubled up, you know, I grew up in New Jersey, and a lot of my friends were doubled up with grandparents their whole lives, and it was wonderful, and it was this warm, loving environment. Families shared meals, shared child care. It was wonderful. This type of doubled up is not that. This is where maybe families are couch surfing, students are couch surfing. They really don't know where they're going to sleep the next night. They might not have access to the kitchen. They can't use the bathrooms. So that's kind of how we see doubled up in the McKinney-Vento world. And that's kind of like one of the biggest differences with the HUD definition. And if we could go to the next one. So those are the major differences. And then some major differences, sorry. And then our next slide is going to show you the McKinney-Vento numbers from 2023 to 2024. So this is right now today, or actually as of October 4th, we have 208 students in Douglas County School District experiencing homelessness. And as you can see, the large majority of them are doubled up. And I want to also clarify that these students attend our brick and mortar schools here in Douglas County. Often our numbers get combined with Hope Online, which is an online school. And while Douglas County School District supports them, I'm not their McKinney-Vento liaison, so I'm not including their numbers today. But we do work closely together to make sure that their students have school supplies and all the access to education that they need. Next slide, please. So in 22-23, which was last year, we ended the year with 414 students. So another difference with HUD and McKinney-Vento is once you become eligible for McKinney-Vento, anytime between July 1st and basically June 30th, you are eligible for that entire school year. And then come July, we zero out, and then no one is eligible, and then we spend the summer going through the process of having families, requalifying them and having those discussions to see where they're living, if it's stable, if this is going to be permanent, and then we kind of discuss, maybe next steps, and if they're going to stay in our school district or move to the other school district they move to. We really look at every student as an individual on a case-by-case basis to make those determinants. But that was last year. So this year we're lower, but we're still coming up to higher numbers. And then this slide is going to show you our student outcomes. So of those 414 students that we identified as homeless, where are they today? And some of these are pretty promising. We had 99 that were eligible again for this school year from last year. 21 graduated and went on with a really solid plan for post-grad success, which is really the goal in all of this is student success and making sure that our students have the best possible outcomes. 111 found stable housing. 153 moved out of our school districts. 26 are no longer eligible due to their doubled up situation becoming stable. And those are sometimes hard conversations to have, but those 26 students really being doubled up is in their best interest and they're thriving. And unfortunately, we had 4 drop out, which is always very unfortunate. But that's where they are today. And we do try to keep in touch with the students who drop out with our high school at-risk program. And we still try to keep in touch and let them know that Douglas County would love to still educate them and give them lots of resources to whatever they need. The next slide is going to show which of our McKinney-Vento students met the HUD definition last year. And this is a little bit, a little bit confusing because I'm counting students who reside predominantly in Douglas County, but on the nights of those HUD counts could have been in a shelter in Denver, could have been in Colorado Springs, Englewood. We utilize all of the shelters in the area. So those students, if they're staying in those shelters, would not be counted, or if they were camping outside of Douglas County. Sometimes families seem to go down to the Springs to camp and then come up, so they wouldn't be counted. And then the hotel motels, if those are, again, not in Douglas County. Some of them, though, were in Douglas County last year staying, but for some reason our families seem to gravitate more towards the Inverness area of hotels. And then our next slide is going to show the services and support that our McKinney-Vento students receive. And that is free and reduced lunch, school fees, before and after care, transportation, which is one of our greatest struggles, is really making sure we get our McKinney-Vento students to school every day. I don't know if any of you are parents out here, but transportation has been a barrier with the rolling cancellations, but we're really trying to support each and every student. Community engagement engagement where I want to thank all of you. I see so many of my partners that I work with all the time on really wrapping these students with all of the supports that Douglas County as a county provides. Temporary hotel motel stays. We can pay for a few nights in a hotel or motel if needed. And then limited medical care needs as far as glasses, medications. We were even to help a student with contacts last year, which was pretty awesome. And also with all of these services and supports, I want to take a minute to discuss our unaccompanied minors. And we didn't include them directly in the slides, but Douglas County, we do have unaccompanied youth that we, of course, are responsible for educating and keeping safe and working with our community partners to find them temporary housing. But those numbers, you know, they kind of fluctuate, but we just want to recognize that sometimes students are homeless on their own here in Douglas County. And I want to give a shout out to the HEART team because they really have been amazing at identifying some of them, calling me saying the students sleeping in Festival Park, what can we do? Megan, are you aware? And I just appreciate that partnership so much. And our last slide just is going to give my contact information and Dr. Kelly Smith, Liz Medina, our amazing outreach assistant. I want to give her a shout out because she is bilingual. So please, if you ever need help, I know the HEART team has used her a lot with help with translating. She is here. The district saw a need for that. And now we have Liz, so that's wonderful. So that's it for me. And now I'm going to introduce Ruby Richards. Unless you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. It's up to you. Okay, Ruby.
So the next slide, the question that often comes, well, first of all, I'm Ruby Richards. I'm Deputy Director of the Department of Human Services. I primarily oversee adult protective services and child protection. But the second question that always comes is, what about those students that are living on their own? And should they be reported to child welfare and the Department of Human Services or not? That's always a hard question to answer. If the child is under the age of 18 and living in a vehicle or on the streets alone, then yes, they should be reported to the Department of Human Services because a parent has a responsibility to provide for or ensure that their child is provided for up until the age of 18. So unfortunately, once they turn 18, if they have chosen to leave the home, have been kicked out of the home, our services are no longer available to them. We are certainly happy to help with resources. And like Megan said, we try to brainstorm and come up with things to try to provide for that student as much as we can. The question then becomes, well, what if they're living in the car with their parents? Is that a child protection concern? And should that be reported? And the answer is, it depends, which I know is not very clear and not very helpful, but it really does depend. It depends upon how old is the child. I mean, is this an infant or a newborn and it is the middle of January? That probably should be reported to us just because of the concerns of the elements and safety and warmth and so on. If this is an older age child living with their parents in the car, and as best you can tell, they've got blankets and things to keep themselves relatively comfortable, and it is, you know, July or October and it's still lovely outside, probably not. In and of itself, homelessness is not something the department would get involved in. Again, we will help to see what resources and services we can provide. Are they on food assistance? Are they on medical assistance? Are there other things that we can help connect them with? The doubling up is also a question that comes to us often. It depends upon whether the parents know that their child is doubled up at a friend's house or a classmate, their boss, and is giving permission for that student to be there. Often what we find is with these students who are 16, 17, almost 18, rules are becoming a struggle in the household. People aren't wanting to, follow each other's rules, and they're choosing to leave. Parents know they're leaving, have granted permission as to where they are staying, maybe providing financial resources to that family they're staying with, might not be. But the parents are aware of where their student is. Their student is still attending school and getting their needs met. that would not be something that we would get involved in. If it's unclear whether parents know where they are and are supporting this, then we can certainly help determine that and determine if they need anything. Clear as mud, I know. Any questions?
You know, Ruby, I don't have any questions for you, but I just really want to thank our friends and colleagues across the street at the Board of Education. You all are wonderful and really appreciate the updated statistics for us. I know when we think about what are we doing here and what's our point, we're trying to get to functional zero in connection with the Built for Zero pledge that we signed throughout the region. So our kids are deeply significant to us, and we really appreciate those updated just data points around where we're at. Very thankful that the HEART team is coordinating well with you, and that team is growing. And so I know we want to ensure that that remains an opportunity for you all. Mike, yeah.
Amazing job, what you guys are doing. The one number that caught my eye was the 9 that were unsheltered. And I just kind of go, oh, what are we doing with those 9? That even though we're helping all the others, I mean, it's great. So I'm not downplaying what's being done, but as I represent the faith-based community, and I was just over with all the pastors before running over here, I want to know what can we do, and we can talk more offline, but how do we as the community play a greater part in this, so it's not just you guys doing all this work, but how do we engage the community? And I think through the faith-based portion, we can play a significant role. So we're in. When I see those 9, I go, we got to do something, and not just for the 9, for the others as well. But we can't have unhoused youth out in our community. That's not okay. So thank you.
No longer 9. So this is like really good news, but we're no longer at 9. They got into some shelters in Denver, which is wonderful. And I also want to say the school district works very closely with the Rock Church. We send families there every Saturday. And your blessings room, it's a beautiful store where our families shop often. So thank you. Every time I come to your church, I just feel this warm sense. So the HEART team too has been instrumental with helping with those 9. So we are not there today. So that's good news.
That's great news.
And I just wanted to add, Megan has been great and her team with sending us referrals. So we're notified of those unsheltered individuals. And our team works closely with DHS, our faith-based partners, and the families, making sure that they have a safe place for those kids to go. And our team will check up on the kids, make sure that they're safe, that they have food. We have been donated some gas cards, so if somebody is living out of their vehicle, they can remain warm with blankets as a temporary solution until we can find a long-term stable housing for them.
That's great. And I know we were really thankful to hear, the original number, I think at one of our previous homeless initiative meetings. And I think we all took a big breath of air and said, wow, that's really high. And I appreciate you bifurcating and clarifying that the point in time and the way we're counting with that true definition of homeless is a little bit different, but still obviously deeply significant. Rand, did you have more on that?
Yeah, I just want to say, it is oftentimes challenging sort of differentiating between the numbers and how people count. And we really recognize that for the school district, their goal is the educational success of our children. And so when they look at providing services to our students who are unhoused, that really is that's one of their focuses. And the guy that does the point in time, we have a sort of a different lens, which is sort of the housing status. And so sometimes those definitions match, sometimes it gets to be challenging, like on the doubled up. But I do want to thank the school district. I want you all to know, across the metro area, when it comes to the point in time count, we work more closely with our school district than pretty much any other community. It is oftentimes a barrier and a challenge to conduct the point in time with the students. And Megan and the team at the school district, what we do with Strive to Thrive and our community partners is a great opportunity to try and get those numbers to match. And so, Megan, again, thanks for the clarity. I really appreciated that slide that demonstrated over the course of the year there were 38 students that would meet that definition. Because we often wrestle with our point in time is this, and school district says this, and I think that slide really clarifies that. So I appreciate all your work pulling those numbers together, and thank you for your ongoing partnership when we conduct the point in time on a regular basis to try and create as accurate a picture as possible of what this looks like in our community.
No, we're moving on to the next item, and this one is near and dear to my heart and probably all of yours as well. We are celebrating a really, really big birthday today. This is the 1-year birthday of the Heart Team, and we have constantly heard throughout the year what a tremendous success Tiffany and her entire team have brought to our community in Douglas County. So a huge happy birthday to Tiffany, and I know we have a 1-year update.
I'll go over the September update, and then Rand's going to show us some pretty slides that are go over the 1-year numbers. So last month, we received a total of 111 referrals. 74% of those were from law enforcement. We had 13 citizen calls, 11 referrals from our fabulous community partners, and 5 public referrals. About half was contacted by Heart. 25, we were unable to locate, 19 refused follow-up, and we had 1 unoccupied camp that has since been cleaned up. Of the 111, we had 109 that were unduplicated just for the month of September. Our fabulous navigators and their case management skills, we were able to provide those services to 25 clients. 1 was referred for employment assistance, 8 for benefit assistance, 2 were referred to a shelter of their choice. 17 were assisted last month with food, 21 were assisted with housing support, and 6 were given transportation assistance from our deputies. The success story that I had for last month, I just wanted to give a shout out to Greg Matthews, who's in the room somewhere over here. He came across a man who was from Wyoming but stranded in Parker in his broken down travel trailer. Greg learned that the man had learning disabilities that impacted his ability to think of solutions that could better his situation. Greg assisted the man with his vehicle by partnering with local churches that funded the needed replacement parts. Greg also provided the man with food and other necessities each week. Greg followed up with the man twice a week until his Social Security money was deposited into his bank account. Once those funds were received, the man bought his insurance for his vehicle, a tank of gas, and Greg and Deputy Ward helped the man navigate to I-25, where it was just a straight shot back to his hometown in Wyoming. Once the man got back to his home state, he contacted Greg, let him know that he was working with some local churches in the area who were going to help him get an apartment. And I just found out yesterday that the man did get an apartment, and he's thriving in just the short time that he left Colorado. I think it was last week he left. So shout out to Greg for his ongoing work with his client and getting him back safely to his home.
Oh, go ahead. If you...
No, please go ahead with your report. It's just more good news. Go ahead.
So I'm Matt with Deputy Matt Hall with Douglas County. We had 2 interactions that were quite interesting last month. That was one great thing that Hart did. And then we met some roadblocks. So the first one I want to go over was when we were dealing with a recently evicted vet. So this vet had PTSD, had some legal issues come up, and it was kind of exaggerating his PTSD, and he was finding it hard to kind of focus on some solutions. When he reached out to some homeless resources, he was told that, hey, unfortunately, you are technically still housed, and until the eviction process is done, you cannot get access to those resources. So there were a few that were provided, but just didn't make sense for him. And then again, with the mental health stuff going on, we interacted with him right after he was evicted and Tiffany actually got him enrolled in a bunch of veteran resources moving forward. But it was this interesting kind of no man's land where we had contact of him before, but we just couldn't have access to the resources until he was actually evicted. And then the next one I want to go over was another interesting encounter with a unhoused individual. This individual was suffering from mental illness in the past, kind of fell back off his medication and whatnot. And so he had a disturbance in the morning, found out he was unhoused, so Hart responded. So he was initially cleared for warrants when we interact with people. That's that first interaction to make sure there's nothing legal going on that we need to address. And he didn't have anything in his record. We interacted with this individual for about 3 hours, And by the time Tiffany and I responded to the scene, he stated that he wanted to go down to the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission. So we were going to transport him down there. As we're transporting him, his mental illness kind of flared up and he wanted to stop. It's a consensual drive, so I can't hold him until we get to the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission. So we pull over. As I'm driving away, I'm getting ready to do my report. I clear him again and come to find out he has a felony assault warrant out of Douglas County. So I think this just goes to show that this individual obviously knew that he had something coming down the pipeline. So when he interacted with deputies the first time, he was probably a little amped based on the fact that he probably thought he was going to jail. So once he provided his name and date of birth and he wasn't arrested because the warrant hadn't been entered into our system yet, I think he kind of relaxed a little bit. But then of course, making second interaction with him, he was not too pleased to see me again. But he was taken into custody and placed in custody for those charges. So I just thought it was pretty interesting to, see kind of the flow of some of the individuals we deal with.
Those are such perfect stories, and I think they represent really well what we're trying to accomplish in Douglas County. At the end of the day, we're leading with compassion. When we talk about the 4 C's, compassion, code enforcement, community services, communication, we want to give the dignity of somebody's name and get to know them. And if they need services, they can get them here and with our partners. But so incredibly thankful that we have law enforcement that is part of this process. We will never hear those bad news stories about somebody with felony assault that maybe hurt somebody because he was let go. So we're here to celebrate the good news, and we're very thankful for what you've done in partnership. This is really tremendous. And I know Rand has probably more statistics in the future. I think we're curious as commissioners to know how much money this maybe has saved the county in terms of DA's budgets, law enforcement budgets, emergency room visits. We know that the diversion from those particular areas can be incredibly helpful. So we will not sing happy birthday today, but we will ask our entire Heart Team membership to stand up so we can recognize you. All right. Happy birthday, guys. Rand?
Yeah. And as we head into this next set of slides in the year-long impact report, when we're done today, and we're on a little bit of a tight timeline, y'all, there's a meeting following us in here, but we're going to try and leave enough time. We have birthday bundt cakes in the back to celebrate the Hearts. We joked all along that we're going to make them wear like birthday hats, like the pointy ones for their first birthday, make them eat their cake with their mouths like a little kid, but we'll forego that. We've got hats on the bundt cakes, so when we're done today, I want to invite you to spend a few moments, grab a cup of coffee, grab a bundt cake, and say happy birthday to the Heart. And share with just a time of celebration, because it's been a lot of work. Do want to thank all of our partners, especially our partners in law enforcement with the Sheriff's Office, our various municipalities, Castle Rock, Lone Tree, Parker, their police departments. It's been quite a year, a lot of effort, a lot of hard work has gone into this, and we've gone through a lot of changes as we've sort of built this on the fly and tried to figure out how to best serve our community. The data I want to show you today, just know this. We through those changes, we've worked our best to sort of collect data, and as Commissioner alluded to, we continue to sort of try to hone in on what data is important. And so as we head into year 2, we hopefully will continue to be able to provide you with some of this data and even better data on what's going on in our community. And so I am excited to share with you some of these things from the impact report. And so at the end of the day, Mike, if we have some extra ones of these, let's just put them in the back, and thank you. I appreciate your help, sir. But these are some really great numbers. In the first year of Heart, we've experienced a 36% reduction in unsheltered homelessness. Through our point-in-time counts, through the work that we do to sort of survey what's happening, we're really pleased with that movement towards functional zero that we see in our community. We have a 55% engagement rate. What this means is when the Heart is able to contact somebody, 55% of the time they actually are like engaging and asking for help and getting services or directing them in the appropriate direction. We still have 45% that aren't. Those are oftentimes ones that they don't want to talk to us. Maybe law enforcement contacts them and says, I don't want the Heart, and so law enforcement doesn't even bother sending us a referral. We call it an information only piece so that we understand who's there. Sometimes those end up getting diverted to law enforcement to take care of sort of their wants or their warrants or some criminal activity that's going on. But what this really demonstrates is that when a referral is made, be it from our partners in law enforcement, from our community partners, from the public, that if the heart can respond and they can talk to that person, most of the time they can help. And that's really important. That's one of the messages I really wanted to share this morning is to our community partners and to our public that making that call to the heart can result in really positive outcomes, because we know then once that engagement happens, 24%, like we heard this morning with Tiffany, 24% of the time we're successful in getting somebody housed. And that's a really significant number. As we looked at that, we were really surprised. Like we were honestly shocked. That was like, wow, that's really great. That's a huge impact in the life of the people that we are serving. And so those are all really significant measures of success from the heart. If you can go to the next slide, please, Kim, we'll dig in just a little bit deeper and give you some more data. We received a total of 1,421 referrals. Those may be multiple referrals for the same person. So we're just counting the number of times somebody said, hey, can you follow up, contact, meet this person? 1,421. We're averaging right now about 81 phone calls a month coming in from the Heartline. It's anything from our community partners to our public, to somebody calling and asking for help themselves. I'm about to get evicted. What do I do? As you can see from our referrals, about 78% of them are generated from our partners in law enforcement. They oftentimes are the point of first contact for folks in our community. We're getting 14% from the public. That's just our citizens calling about someone they see, somebody they know, somebody they're concerned about. And about 8% of them are coming from our community partners. Those are coming from our friends in the nonprofits and our churches, from other organizations in our community. We did have some data up there about where they're coming from by location. So you can see sort of across the community where those referrals are coming from. And that matches a lot of the other numbers we see when it comes to our point in time numbers in terms of just what our dispersion rate is across the county. Kim, if you could go to the next slide. So what happens when we get that referral and we're able to provide services? Well, there are 220 people that we would say were enrolled in the HEART program. So those are people like the story you heard about from Greg this morning. Somebody that the heart contacts. They're now working on finding solutions to that person. You'll see that case management of 720. That's a pretty high number. But as you heard even in Greg's story this morning, there were multiple times that Greg went and contacted that individual, worked with that individual, checked up with that individual as they're working on that, ultimately that solution of helping them fix their car, get back to Wyoming and get housing. And so oftentimes you'll see some duplicate numbers. Somebody can get multiple case management services. They get transportation and case management, housing and case management. So a lot of those are combined, but you'll see a lot of the effort. Not surprising, case management, housing, transportation, the top three. That does not surprise us whatsoever. And then a little bit on the age range there, primarily sort of those middle ages, 25 to sort of 54 are primarily who we're seeing out there. We do have some younger ones over the course of the last year between the ages of 0 and 17, and that really kind of almost aligns very well with what we saw with the school district numbers as we look at the folks that we're serving across our community. But that gives you really a sense of who we're seeing and what services are being provided. And so hopefully this gives you an insight into what's going on with the heart. It hopefully helps you see sort of the impact of what we're making. We are very pleased. We're looking forward to the next year and hopefully expanding the heart so we can have a greater impact and continue to see those numbers reduced, more people housed, fewer people out on our streets in our community. And so we're excited to continue to track that and see those successes happen in our community. So happy to take any questions about the data. We'll make this available to everybody. It will be posted on our website on the Heart page today so that we have this available to our community members who are interested in this data. So Commissioner, if there's no questions, I'd be happy to turn it back to you, but also happy to take any questions from the executive committee.
Any questions for Rand?
Well, I know we've been thanking the HEART team quite a bit, but none of this is possible without our phenomenal county staff. So huge thanks to Rand Clark and Jen Eby, and of course, everything that Dan and his team does over at Human Services. We really have wonderful county staff here, and we certainly couldn't do it alone. So thank you guys. It's your birthday too, Rand.
A few days ago.
A few days ago, right?
I'll have a cupcake.
Yeah. So with that, I know we're racing through because we do have a special business meeting here today, but let me just ask, are there any executive committee member updates? We always appreciate each of you being here, and I know we've had a lot of conversations about the business community. I don't know if we have anything from the EDC standpoint.
So I was just talking to the mayor and I said, it's amazing what a year does, because the amount of people that we see around our businesses has reduced dramatically, and it's felt and visual and real. So the slide's nice, but it's here. So congratulations on a great journey. And I do have one question. When you say expand the heart team, what's the thought about that?
Well, we could tag team this one. I think for the county, in my 5 years, when we pilot a program, and first and foremost, this program started with ARPA funds. It wasn't general fund. It was really a pilot without any additional tax dollars coming from our citizens, but it has worked so well. And I believe it saved us so much money that we would like to continue to see this group expand. The other big thing, I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement, and I believe in caring for the caretakers. And when people are really successful at their jobs, they get more work. And so I know that with our 3 heart teams, they're getting more referrals now than they did at the beginning, obviously. So ensuring that they have respite and they're able to care for themselves, rest and refresh and have some support is really significant to me, and I believe to this homeless initiative. So the specific answer would be increasing to 5, from 3 teams to 5 teams, and that's not just navigation, of course, that's a navigator paired with law enforcement. And the other big thing we wanted to ensure is that our call line always met with a live person. I think the credibility of what Heart does is dependent upon a person answering that call on the other end. And that's tough when we only have 3 teams. So I think expanding that will help. The sheriff has been tremendous in ensuring that that is already happening now. So those calls roll right over to dispatch, I believe. And Sheriff Weekly got that done in like a week. I mean, it was unbelievable.
To extend the thank you to the police department as well. That engagement and support, you can also see the presence is just huge from that perspective, and really just in general. We're dealing with further south, as you guys know, in the South Nevada area. Colorado Springs is not taking the same approach quite yet, I think, that this team has done. And so one of my missions, and I'll look to ask for your help on how I go that direction as well, and say, how does this expand to real streets up and down the Front Range, even though that's outside of our county? A lot of businesses aren't just here. They have locations up and down the Front Range. And so that's the case of ours. And we would love to continue to be a voice of sharing what's happening here that's positive. And it's not positive still in a lot of communities. And so thank you guys for all your hard work together. And the success is real.
So we have received $1.6 million from the state to expand the Heart team. We are also keeping our fingers crossed for another grant that will add an additional about $900,000. We do expect that coming later this year, early 2024, so the next couple of months. We're getting close to that. That we'll be able to make that expansion, not only expand to 5 teams. I think the other thing that's important to note is one of our goals in that is expanding the hours and the days of coverage, so that we have somebody into the evening hours potentially. We're also looking at, we're assessing our call logs and our phone lines to sort of see when the times are most needed for coverage, and using that as an assessment. But we do hope to extend the hours. Right now we're operational primarily from 6 to 6, Monday through Friday. We're hoping to expand those hours. So I think that'll be the other advantage of the expanded team, is being able to offer that in-person response at that moment that's needed when we have those two additional teams come online. So timing on that is getting close. So we're just waiting for ink on contracts.
Yeah, and I'll just add, commissioners, it's interesting. Part of our superpower is just convening, but we're the people in the grocery store. We're not out in D.C. We're the people that and see around in the neighborhood. So look and feel is a big deal, and I get that a lot, especially from business owners, that, when you cross that county line into Douglas County, it does kind of feel different, feel safer, and that's obviously hard to is a big part of that, but obviously that's law enforcement and all of our community partners. When I say we convene, we have really great relationships with commissioners along the Front Range and throughout the state. And Commissioner Thomas and I are involved in a variety of organizations, Colorado Counties Incorporated, Metro Area County Commissioners. So and there's not that many of us. There's a lot of mayors. Sorry, Mayor. We love our mayors. There's not that many commissioners. So when we engage with them, I mean, there's a handful, there's 5 in El Paso County, which is Colorado Springs, and we know all of them on a first name basis. So I think our goal is to continue to expand. Sheriff?
The one thing I'd like to add is it's critical that law enforcement and the navigators are proactive to this. I've been down in Colorado Springs. I've driven along there. I see exactly what you're talking about. And while they have a very great facility down there, it's not a good look down there. There's homeless on every corner. The parks are filled with homeless people, and it's not a good model. And the key to that is having enough law enforcement personnel to stay on top of the problem, because once you lose that, or the calls for service in that community are such that law enforcement only responds to the emergencies, you're in a bad place once you start only answering calls for service. So the ability for law enforcement to be proactive is critical, because once you lose that, you're in trouble.
Right. Anything else from our executive committee today? Okay. So with that, we'll move on to new business, any strategic planning, and we'll turn that over to Rand Clark.
Yeah, thank you. So Kim, if you could go to the next slide. Last month, we were able to introduce to you all our blueprint, and we wanted to bring it back up today and sort of continue to engage in that conversation, ask a couple of pointed questions. I did want to just sort of as a really high level overview, if you were not able to join us last month, this is something we rolled out as our Housing Plus blueprint. It demonstrates and shows sort of a continuum of support from street outreach all the way into permanent housing, the types of programs and the types of resources that we have available in our community, and maybe where some of the opportunities are for us. On the opportunity side, we did recently submit an application through funding made available through the Emergency Solutions Grant and Proposition 123 to identify some funding for next year for homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. It's kind of right there in the middle. It's to take those folks like Deputy Hull described earlier that are right on that brink and try and divert them from homelessness so that they can get right into housing, but also recognizing that in our community, a lot of times folks are newly homeless, and that the sooner we can rehouse them, the more successful we are in terms of those long-term outcomes. And so it's support for a short amount of time. It's not permanent housing where they get a voucher, but it's how do we support them into getting back into housing as quickly as possible, into our workforce, making sure they're self-sufficient and they can continue this on their own. And so we did apply for some funding in that space just last week, and then really lays out down on the bottom sort of this sort of foundation of what the plus services are. This idea that when we do services with that plus in mind, that it's adding the accountability, the growth, and then the well-being, like those 3 pillars of sort of support that are necessary to achieve successful outcomes. So we had a really great conversation last month around the need for some of that diversion area, sort of in the transitional gap diversion programming. And so we wanted to sort of pick that back up a little bit, ask you all, are there other things we need to consider? And I guess the real pointed question we wanted to ask today is it a season? And Dan, this goes back to, I think, a question or a comment you raised last month that really resonated with me of what can we do to really strengthen, develop a model in that middle area of transitional gap and diversion programs where we're working together and we have a coordinated approach. And so is it time to sort of stand up potentially a work group out of our executive committee that includes some of our community partners that offer those services, the Department of Human Services, and really look at, hey, if this is the area where we're going to maybe obtain some funding, fingers crossed, or as we look at being strategic, how can we work together in a coordinated way to sort of row across the lake in the same direction and pull together in that. And so wanted to open that up for conversations, talk with all you on the executive committee about what that might look like and how we can support that, but continuing to use this as a blueprint to sort of shape what we do, moving away from, we want to continue to support street outreach. We want to continue to work down in that realm of street outreach and the emergency shelter with the Aurora Navigation Center and some of those things, but then also how do we continue to work upstream as well. So Dan, since I called you and blamed you for this. So
I would absolutely support the work group. I do think it's important for everyone to know that because of the synergy in here, and even before the homeless initiative started, there have been working groups regarding sort of this issue for years. It's important to know that when people are in a position of getting evicted, they have often come to all of our agencies a couple of different times and asked for some sort of help. And sometimes they're able to be made whole based off of going to multiple agencies. But then when they come back 3 months later or 4 months later, it's a really difficult decision to make in order to decide whether or not you're going to be able to help that individual again. And I look around the room here and I look at Mike and Aaron and Dan, they're in that position every day. We do have work groups to know and track the money that we have given out to make people at least get to their back rent or their back heat, but we can't do it multiple times. And I do think over the last couple of years, we've seen that happen where you have a family that comes and is so far behind. And with the Pathways to Self-Sufficiency program that we had last year, we were able to make people whole at $5,000, $6,000. If you come to the Department of Human Services today, we won't be able to do more than $500, $1,000 on a good day, because we have to make sure that we have money for the entire year to help everybody. And I believe that would be the same thing for all of the different nonprofits. As the federal dollars have stopped for COVID, we are way more judicious with our money. And it's really sad when you have to tell a family, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because you're going to be in that same circumstance next month. So what can we do to get you out of where you are, but put you in a more affordable place? And I think that's what that work group could be about, is the diversion to not getting evicted, but what does that actually equal, and how all of us are cobbling together hundreds of dollars, it used to be thousands of dollars, to help people get from $5,000 back on rent to back to where they're supposed to be. I'm also finding, and I think my peers are here too, landlords are a lot more aggressive now than they were, and I don't blame that either. If you're not getting paid, at some point you have to make the hard decision too. So it might be interesting for us, Rand, to involve one of the different apartment complexes that we see around and obviously the Douglas County Homeless or Housing Partnership to be part of this group, because I think all of these things coalesce.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And one note on the funding, you'll see in that diversion, we listed 3 programs: eviction prevention, homeless prevention, and rapid rehousing. So the current proposal that we submitted was only for homeless and rapid rehousing, and that's primarily because that's all that was available. We anticipate a separate request for funding for eviction prevention. So we're following that closely, and if that's something we want to consider, we will certainly consider that when it's made available based on the direction from our leadership. But other comments regarding what this could look like, how we can work together in this space? Do you want to mic?
Well, I look over at Dan and the work that they're doing with the food and also with Aaron. And I've noticed one area, I think from a preventative side, I mean, we look at this is amazing, by the way, Rand. I know just what you guys have put together here in the pillars, the accountability, the personal growth, the well-being. There's a piece I think that I don't know if it's to add or just to think about as well, as on the preventative side, as we and all the groups here, we also do food, distribute a lot of food. Just a week ago, we distributed food to over 800 people all across Colorado that are just struggling. And what we're finding is, one, they're so grateful because they're saying that with everything going up, with gas prices going up, with food going up, the utilities, with their housing costs going up, all of a sudden they're in a bind and they're not able to afford the housing that they're in. And so by getting food, and it's a significant help that can bring in. I mean, if like for us, they can come twice a month. That's a couple $100. That's maybe $400 of food that they can receive free. Now they can utilize their funds to help pay for their rent or for their utilities or for other things. And so I think there's some other areas, and there's probably other areas other than food where we could assist or begin to assist to offset some of the rising costs, to be more on the preventative side to keep people from getting into that place. And then I think it's also the just walking alongside these people, as Dan was saying. I mean, they come in the first time, they get help, and then they come back the second time, and you're like, if we help them again, we're saying yes to them, we're saying no to somebody else that needs help maybe for the first time. And so it is a real struggle right now that we're in, and we're seeing resources depleting and the needs increasing. And so I love the fact that we are talking about this here at this table, and I think we will find some solutions. And so I'm thankful for our county just to step up and say, let's address this situation now. And we have great people working together. So thank you all.
I agree with everything that's been said. So we've spent $90,000 more than our yearly budget already this year on rent assistance. And those are $250 and $500 checks. So nobody's staying in their apartment just by our little $500. But the need is huge, and it's totally. It could be mostly people in the prevention category, right? It's what I talked about last time, the people that are rent burdened, cost burdened, folks that, are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And from what I can tell, have no idea how to do a budget. So maybe, in this discussion, there's educational resources that can come into play, especially financial education. And I don't know how to tie it to assistance, but, we did some of that in the Pathways program. And I think there's a huge number of people in Douglas County that are on the cusp, and with one disaster could be, in real trouble. So to me, that's where my head goes in terms of a priority of working on prevention.
I just want to echo what Dan said. To me, in addition to the potential for different financial assistance and things through the applications that Rand is talking about, that dark green square at the bottom, those housing plus services, for me, I think that's the key to helping people move along the line of green into that permanent housing solution, so that we're not having folks come back to see us every time something small or large happens to them, so that people have the tools and the resources that they need to make some real transformational change in their situation.
The only other thing I was going to add is last month I announced that we had more people on food assistance and Medicaid than we ever have before. We have more people on food assistance this month than we've ever had before. Medicaid is moving up and down just based off of the unwind of the public health emergency. But one thing that the manager over the assistance payments, Aaron Johnson, said to me yesterday that I really took away was, before things cost so much, you wouldn't see people go through the motions to apply for food assistance for $27 a month. Now you're having people go through the motions to apply for food assistance for $27 a month, because that $27 could offset something else. I do think what Mike said is really important, is people are making a decision right now between paying their rent and paying for food. And paying for your rent then not paying for your rent obviously gets you behind. And even with a budget, with things doubling in cost for food, people are making those decisions. I was at the pharmacy last night. There was a lady who couldn't afford her medication. She was choosing between I knew what they were, her mental health medications or her groceries. She chose her groceries. That's a horrible decision to have to make. So I do think the prevention group here could hit on all of those things, and it's about basic needs.
Stephen is looking up a piece of data for me. We just did our community needs assessment where housing was identified as the highest need, and he's got data, Dan, about those that are cost burdened. But was talking with Mike and his team at the Rock about a week ago about what it takes to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Douglas County. And right now, the low income rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is just over $1,600 a month. In order to qualify that, you have to make 2.5 times the rent and income. And so that looks like, that looks like almost $4,000 a month to even get into what we would consider, one of our low-income rental places in Douglas County. And that's not just Douglas County. That, by the way, is across the metro area. Like those low-income 60% units is established for our entire area. And so really that idea that Dan and Aaron have talked about, the path towards financial health, financial accountability, learning how to budget and spend your finances well, along with then that case management to help them identify appropriate employment outcomes that really increase that educational attainment, and therefore then the ability they have to then earn a living, I think are really valuable. And that comes as part of that accountability and personal growth down below that we see on that line. And so, wanted to highlight that piece of data, and Steve is bringing me the cost burden data as we speak. So thank you, Stephen. So in Douglas County, the cost burden housing, so this is where it exceeds 30% of their income. It's estimated that about 33,000 households in Douglas County are cost burdened. And if you get into the severely cost burdened, so those would be where their housing is more than 50% of their income, we're talking almost 13,000, 12,912 is what the demographics tell us around Douglas County. And so again, that idea of diversion and prevention and the need for that in our community to help people stay housed, to address those things that they need, like their basic needs, also their well-being, their education, their employment opportunities, so that they can really take care of them paying their bills on their own, really becomes super important. So thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate this. Anything else, Commissioner? This topic. Thank you for the good discussion. Are we kind of in the general consensus that we want to lean towards potentially forming a work group on this? Looking around the table, Commissioner, I don't know that we need anything formal, Commissioner, but I'd love your input and direction as we move forward.
Well, I will accept the motion, but I think that it's really important to recognize the nonprofit community, the faith-based partners here as well, because this success has really been because of that partnership. Heart has nowhere to take people unless you guys exist, and I think it's really important that as we think forward, hopefully we're in a place where that functional zero number, we're getting close, we can think more about some of these other options for this homeless initiative to work on. I also want to recognize our friends and colleagues from Diversion at the Justice Center. I see you guys, and you are a huge impact as well. They're helping people reintegrate that were justice involved when they leave the Justice Center, and we really appreciate you guys. So with that, I will accept a motion from any member of the Executive Committee to form a work group around this Douglas County Housing Plus Blueprint. Okay, we got a first. Is there a second? Is there a second? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? And that motion carries. Okay. I think we probably need to identify who will be on that work group.
Yeah, that'll be our next job, is to identify who, both from the Executive Committee and from our work group members, who make sense to convene and engage in providing us with some ideas, recommendations, thoughts.
Great. You've provided a lot of good thoughts, so thank you, Rand. Anything else on that item? Okay, so with that, did you have anything else on strategic planning, Rand?
Not unless anybody else does.
Does anybody else have some strategic planning? We like strategic planning. All right. With that, we'll move to public comment. Is there any public comment today from anyone here that's joining us? Okay, any public comment online? I see Bob Laguerre up there. I don't know if he is here to comment.
No online comments.
No online comment. Okay. Well, just always want to make sure that there's an opportunity for citizens and really anyone to make a comment. But listen, a huge happy birthday again to the Heart team. So incredibly proud and thankful for the work of this Douglas County Homeless Initiative. You know, I'm really appreciative of the strategic planning that's going into next steps. We never want to rest on our laurels. And if we can focus on what we do best and continue to improve the situation in Douglas County, we want to do that. So with that, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.